the most recent indictment against former President Trump? If so, what do you make of it? Secondly, some of the GOP presidential hopefuls, including Governor DeSantis, have already citing Jerry Ford, have already contemplated the idea of a prospective pardon. So, what do you think of the indictment? What do you think about the notion of a pardon if the former president gets convicted?
I mean, what a sad situation. What a sad situation. I've not read the indictment yet. I kind of lived through it. I will read it, but I know what happened, and I know that the president was culpable in probably the worst misfeasance by a president in the history of this country in what he did between November 2020 and January 6th, 2021. Everybody's accountable, and everybody's innocent until they're proven guilty. So, I view that about this president. I know what I think about his behavior in terms of its gross immorality and destruction of democratic norms. When it gets into the court system, I practiced law for years. I have a healthy respect for the notion that everybody's accountable and everybody's innocent until they're proven guilty. But these are the most serious charges that could be leveled against someone. I spoke on that day after the attack on the Capitol, and I described what the president did exactly in the way that is in this indictment. It was an effort to disenfranchise 80 million people. It was the biggest single-day disenfranchisement ever, the disenfranchisement of African American and women, historically, massive, but in terms of one day's effort, it was an effort to disenfranchise 80 million people that voted for President Biden and Vice President Harris. And that is sort of the gravamen of the charge, that you undertook steps fraudulently, knowing they were wrong, to interrupt an election and disenfranchise 80 million people, even to the point of using violence. Those who describe it as a riot, that doesn't do it. That doesn't do it the justice of the magnitude of the error, because it was designed on a particular day, at a particular moment, for a particular purpose, and that purpose.
I call it Wilmington, North Carolina, a riot.
Yeah, right.
It was a coup.
Yeah, it was an attempted coup, interruption of the peaceful transfer of power, willing to use violence to do it. And so I'm very, I got asked, I was doing a meeting like this at the Washington Post about 2 weeks ago, and they said, yeah, but isn't there a lot of political downsides? Doesn't it make President Trump a martyr? It seems like it's strengthening his hold on his voters rather than otherwise. And I said, there are political downsides, but the downsides of no accountability for this are worse. I lived in Honduras. It was a military dictatorship that leaders could get away with anything. There was no accountability. They could change any rule they wanted to. I had an early experience in seeing what that society is like. And the political downside of no accountability is much worse than whatever the political risk of this prosecution is.
I hear a lot of loud talk about the Constitution.